The lights flicker. Not a technical glitch. It's a warning. We're talking about a night in WWE history, a night where the line between script and reality didn't just blur, it shattered. Forget the headlines, forget the highlights, because what you are about to hear is the untold story of the most shocking, most emotionally charged walkout in modern wrestling, Ronda Rousey, the baddest woman on the planet, a nickname that suddenly took on a terrifying real-world meaning. The audience, they didn't just watch. They held their breath. They didn't cheer or boo. The arena went silent. Why? What was the final straw? And who was caught in the crossfire? This is the story of the fury that consumed the Rowdy One and the silence that followed. You won't believe the secret meeting that happened moments before she hit the curtain. Keep watching. It was not supposed to end like this. Not for Ronda Rousey. Not for the multi-million-dollar machine that is WWE. We are transported back to the pivotal moment. The evening where the carefully constructed illusion began to crumble beneath the weight of genuine, raw emotion. Ronda had always been an outsider, a fighter, a legend forged in the unforgiving octagon of the UFC. Her transition to the squared circle was a gamble, a phenomenal, electrifying gamble that paid off in millions. But the pressure cooker of the WWE schedule, the political tightropes of the backstage world, and the relentless demands of the road they were taking their toll, the cracks were starting to show. They were visible in the way she moved, in the clipped tone of her interviews, and most of all, in the intense, almost feral glare she reserved for certain members of the roster and, more alarmingly, the management engagement line. Did you notice the change in Ronda's demeanor before this event? Drop a comment below with the moment you first saw the pressure getting to her. The specific event that night was a tag team match, a seemingly innocuous mid-card setup designed to give all participants some ring time and heat. But backstage, the atmosphere was thick. It was suffocating. Whispers traveled faster than any dropkick. There was a known dispute, a creative disagreement that had spiraled into something deeply personal. The script called for a certain sequence of events, a choreographed dance of dominance and vulnerability. But Ronda, the legitimate fighter, had begun to push back hard. She felt the creative direction was undermining her legitimacy, her history, and her status as a mainstream cultural icon. She wasn't just an employee, she was a star, and that distinction, she felt, was being ignored. The final meeting before the show went live was less a discussion and more a confrontation, a shouting match that echoed through the otherwise quiet corridors of the production area. This was the fuse being lit. The tension was palpable. Witnesses later spoke of a cold, almost predatory calm that settled over Rousey after the verbal storm. It was the calm before the physical tempest. She taped her fists, she laced her boots, she put on the game face. But beneath the stoic exterior, the fury was brewing, a toxic cocktail of professional slight and personal offense. When her music hit, the initial roar was deafening, a standard WWE spectacle. But watch the footage closely. The usual spring in her step. Gone. The triumphant confidence replaced by a cold surgical focus. She was not there to entertain. She was there for a purpose only she truly understood. This was not a show, it was a reckoning. The bell rang, and the match began, but the real story was already unfolding outside the ring. The ring crew, the producers, the referees, they all knew. Something was about to break. And when it did, the silence would be louder than any championship pop. The first sequence of the match was perfunctory, a formality before the explosion. No one was ready for the sudden shift. No one was ready for the walkout. The 500 words end here, setting the stage for the dramatic in-ring implosion. The match was barely 5 minutes in. The audience, still buzzing from the opening spectacle, was leaning into the action. Standard WWE fare, but suddenly the rhythm of the performance fractured. It was a minute detail that only the most dedicated fans, the ones who watch every episode of Ring Legends, would catch. Ronda was tagged in. Her opponent, a seasoned performer, delivered a predetermined offense, a standard move designed to generate a near fall. But instead of executing the planned counter, Rousey froze. She didn't sell the move. She ignored it. Her eyes locked not on her opponent, but on the hard camera, and then, slowly, deliberately, on the commentary table. The change in her body language was instantaneous and frightening. It was no longer the character Ronda Rousey in the ring. It was the woman, the fighter, Ronda. And she was seething. The confusion was immediate. Her tag team partner looked at her, confusion morphing into alarm. The referee, trained to manage every unexpected contingency, was signaling furiously, but Rousey was already in motion. Not towards her opponent, but towards the ropes. A critical decision point. The script demanded she continued the sequence. The show demanded she perform. But the fury demanded something else entirely. She ducked under the top rope, a simple, non-dramatic movement that, in that context, became the most shocking exit imaginable. She wasn't selling an injury. She wasn't playing possum. She was simply ... leaving. The sudden, unscripted nature of the action hit the commentators first. They stumbled over their words. The smooth patter of play-by-play dissolved into stammering questions and nervous speculation. She walked up the steel steps and grabbed a chair. The entire arena collectively sucked in a breath. Was she going to use it? Was this a sudden, violent heel turn? No. The chair was merely an instrument for a message. She didn't enter the ring. Instead, she stood at ringside, her back to the bewildered crowd, and hurled the chair with terrifying force, not at a wrestler, but at the LED screen that lined the ring apron. The sound of the plastic and metal impacting the screen was a sharp, ugly crack that echoed through the PA system. The screen flickered, a temporary scar on the polished presentation. It was a symbolic act. I am breaking your production. I am shattering your illusion. She turned. The camera caught her face, a mask of cold, uncompromising fury. Not anger, but a profound, settled rage. Her partner was pleading. The referee was gesturing wildly. The show was in freefall, but Rousey was already marching up the ramp. Her pace was quick, determined, utterly non-negotiable. She never looked back. She didn't acknowledge the chaos she left behind. The arena's roar, which should have been one of shock and anger, began to fade. The collective realization of the crowd that this was not part of the show was setting in. The fans, the most vocal and engaged audience in the world, were slowly, terrifyingly, going silent. The spectacle had stopped. The drama was real. 500 words complete, ending with the chilling walk up the ramp. As Ronda Rousey disappeared behind the black curtain, the silence in the arena became the main event. It was a profound, suffocating void where 15,000 voices should have been roaring. Think about that for a moment. In the kinetic, non-stop world of WWE, silence is the most shocking sound of all. It's the sound of disbelief. It's the sound of a crowd recognizing that they have just witnessed a breach of the fourth wall, a moment of unvarnished, dangerous truth. The remaining performers in the ring were left directionless. The entire meticulously planned broadcast itinerary was instantly useless. The cameras, unsure where to focus, darted nervously between the empty ramp and the bewildered faces in the front row. It was a car wreck happening in slow motion, played out on international television. What was the root cause? The official narrative, the one that WWE would eventually spin with careful damage-controlling language, would center on a creative difference. But the truth, whispered by those who were there, was far more complex, more personal, and deeply rooted in the culture of professional wrestling. It wasn't just about who won or lost a match. It was about respect. It was about the perceived condescension from management towards the outside celebrity. Rousey wasn't just a world-class athlete. She was a woman who had built her empire on authenticity and raw power. The constant need to be managed, micromanaged, and have her persona diluted for general audience consumption had finally crossed a critical threshold. Sources close to the situation revealed the final script change was the catalyst. It required Rousey to execute a move that she felt was unnecessarily dangerous, not for her, but for her opponent, or perhaps worse. A move that was too overtly theatrical and thus diminished her legitimate fighting credibility. To her, it was a step too far into the fake side of the business, a side she had always tried to bridge with her own verifiable toughness. She saw it as an insult to her legacy, a blatant disregard for her input, and a final arrogant attempt by a powerful executive to assert total control. The walkout was not a tantrum. It was a statement of principle, delivered with the explosive force of a caged lioness. Backstage, the ensuing chaos was monumental. Producers were screaming into headsets. Security was mobilized, not for the arena, but for the talent area, anticipating a further escalation. The biggest star had just quit the match, the show, and perhaps the company, live on air. The remaining wrestlers, true professionals caught in the maelstrom, scrambled to salvage the match, working without a script, relying on instinct and years of training to fill the void. But the lifeblood had been drained from the contest. The silence outside was a mirror to the panic inside. The moment had passed. The impact was irreversible. The 500 words draw to a close, focusing on the immediate aftermath and the complex reasons for the act. The fury didn't dissipate once Rousey hit the backstage area. It intensified. Imagine the scene, the controlled chaos of a live wrestling production, suddenly derailed by an unholy act of professional defiance. The first person to confront her was not a member of security, but a high-ranking producer. He approached with caution, attempting to temper the situation with a mix of professional reprimand and soft concern. It was the wrong approach. The shouts that followed were not the mic-tested, theatrical roars of a wrestling promo. They were genuine, raw, and full of professional venom. Rousey was not yelling about a storyline. She was yelling about a breach of trust, a betrayal of their prior agreement, and the disrespect she felt she had endured for months. This was a total creative burnout hitting a critical mass. The confrontation quickly drew a crowd. Top-tier executives, other wrestlers preparing for their spots, and the terrified members of the production crew. Most stood back, frozen, watching the spectacle. Very few dared to intervene. The aura of the baddest woman on the planet was never more real than in that moment. She wasn't just arguing, she was threatening to take her name, her star power, and her legitimacy entirely out of the equation. The financial implications alone were staggering. This wasn't a minor walkout. This was a potential multi-million-dollar catastrophe unfolding in a cramped hallway. The intervention that finally brought the shouting to a halt was not an executive. It was a respected veteran, a performer who had seen it all: the betrayals, the politics, the meltdowns. He stepped between Rousey and the producer, not with authority, but with quiet, earned respect. He didn't take sides. He simply asked one question: what message does this send to the people who follow you? It was a moment of pure emotional leverage, focusing the volatile energy not on the executive suite, but on the loyal fan base. This veteran's name, often a footnote in this story, was the unsung hero that prevented the situation from turning physical. Rousey paused. The fury didn't vanish, but the external explosion did. She turned on her heel and walked directly to her locker room. The door slammed shut with a finality that spoke volumes. The executives and producers were left in the hallway, assessing the damage. Phones were ringing off the hook. Legal teams were already being notified. The show, however, had to go on. A quick, improvised finish was relayed to the remaining wrestlers in the ring. The commentators were given hurried, inaccurate notes to spin the controversy as a potential storyline development, but everyone knew the truth. The walkout was a bomb, and the fragments were already scattering across the entire company structure. The show went limp, but the story had just begun. 500 words complete, detailing the explosive confrontation behind the curtain.